Our speaker tonight has spent a good deal of time abroad, both east and west, looking for markets for Maryland products, inviting gullible tourists to come to Maryland as an ideal vacation spot. Now, in some ways, that would be a conventional introduction. But what we don't have tonight is a conventional speaker. And what I've said doesn't really capture the spirit of this man. What we have here is a full-blown political phenomenon. Mayor of Baltimore, 15 years, 15 rough, tough years. Had to push and pull and bully the city council, had to push and pull the ratty, lizard-chewed Port of Baltimore and convert it into, along with some developers, into this glittering masterpiece, which we now call Inner Harbor. The curious thing is, though, having done that and had himself named the best mayor in the United States by Time magazine, he then went on to another job and was very doubtful about even speaking civilly to the mayor who followed him. That was quirk number one. He went on to governor, elected in 1986 by a record majority, re-elected by an almost record majority. He didn't find that quite satisfactory. But again, endless wrestling with the legislature. Produces the light rail system, Camden Yards, a brand new revenue source in very difficult times. He makes Maryland a Democratic rampart on the East Coast. And then, of course, quirk number two, comes election year, he endorses a Republican for president. He's smiling a little smile. In the news media, this man has run up by far the largest, widest gathering of news coverage, yardage of news coverage that any Marylander of any stripe has ever gathered. All of it deserved. To this day, he feels that the media does not understand him. Only a couple of weeks ago at a news conference, he picked up a gun and aimed it at a reporter, thereby shocking even the National Rifle Association, which says that guns don't kill people. So what we have here is not some striped pants diplomat. We don't have somebody who is a slave to the politically correct. What we have is a genuine, card-carrying, jet-propelled, all-brake system wang-doodle. So I give you, with the greatest pleasure and satisfaction, Governor William Donald Schaefer, often known, behind his back, as Willie Don. Governor, it was good of you to stop by tonight for a chat with our friends.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I wish you'd have given me all those kind words when you were at the Sun paper. You know, the Sun paper, when I was elected mayor, the endorsement was, well, got to have somebody. So we'll be for him for 4 years, and he'll hold things together, and then we'll get somebody with some good sense. And they said, quote, so many times that he has about as much personality as a dead fish. He has no, whatever the word was, I've forgotten. Whatever it was nice. And I have generated more publicity than just about anyone else, all bad. I'm looking forward to the day, and the obituary will be nice. They always do that. They always write a nice obituary. I can't wait to read it. It's amazing. It's, well, there's so much to talk about and so much to put in perspective. We were successful in Maryland. We were successful in Baltimore. I guess more in Baltimore than any other place. And the one thing that the mayor had was his ability to surround himself with very competent people. Because I don't care how good you may think you are, if you don't have people to care, people that care, people whose dedication to people is so important. And I was lucky. I had almost in a way, I don't know whether the word is zealots or what the word is, but time made no difference. Days made no difference. It was just what we could accomplish to help the people in the city. I had a call today from someone in Atlantic City, Paige, who is really a great lady. She was on the other side. She was with the newspaper, and I brought her over and made her a human being. Paige has done a marvelous job for me. She's got me away from fighting with the press, but she said, people in Atlantic City, there's a reporter up there who wants you to talk to him about how did you sell Baltimore? What did you do? Because the people in Atlantic City want to know what happened here. It was so simple. It was, I guess it was so simple. First of all, we made ourselves proud of ourselves. We built pride in ourselves. We told everybody what a great city we had. We told everybody that it was a place that was good to live in. We told people about Fort McHenry, and I used that so many times, that we were the only city in the United States that had Fort McHenry. And people, just as you did, they all laughed at me. And they all got to thinking about it, though, and they thought, that's right. And then I said to them, we got great museums. And people said, museum? I never go to a museum, so people started to go to museums. They started to look at them. I remember one time I used to go to churches. Whenever I would go any place, I would go to the churches in the city or in the country or wherever it might be, and an opportunity to go around the churches in our city. And I said to our people, I want a film made of our churches. And they said, it's a film of our churches? First of all, we don't have any great churches. And I said, yeah. Mm-hmm. What about up on North Charles Street? What about down in, Little Italy? And so, to humor me, they started to film on the churches in the city of Baltimore. And the first church was reluctant. It's one of those silly things he's doing. And after that, people started to mount up, and we got so many people wanted to take a look at the film on our churches and what great churches we had. The most important thing was telling our people about the neighborhoods, building that pride in each neighborhood in the city. And I learned this 35 or 40 years ago when I went to Pittsburgh, and there was a young man there that talked about the villages of Baltimore. And he had a vision that I didn't even know what he was talking about. And he talked about the village of Hampton and the village of Evanston Village, and the village of Mount Washington, all these villages. Gone beyond me. And then after years of thinking and watching, Mr. Rouse was absolutely right. Absolutely right. Man of great vision, great vision. And I learned from him, and so we started to build in neighborhoods. It wasn't the Inner Harbor. The Inner Harbor was second or third or fourth. It was the neighborhoods. People first, neighborhood second, and then pride. I used to hate anyone who would say, I go from Washington to Philadelphia and around to Baltimore. Oh, they used to burn me. And then we put up big stop signs on the highway. And then that silly guy, the mayor, when they'd have a water break, he used to put a big sign up. Big sign. This is a fountain for your benefit. And I remember the great water break up on John Street, where the people up there, we dug up everything. We had signs all over the place. And those people up there were genteel, wonderful people, and they would come out, watch our people working, and bring out their sherry or whatever it might be, and watch. It became an event. It became an event. And the important thing that I tried to get over to that young reporter today was all those things are not something you should hide. You emphasize them. Make them important. Much more difficult in the state. Hard to get people to understand when you try to do something like that, and I ran into trouble doing that. Anyway, before I start talking about foreign investment and foreign affairs and the rest of it, I'm so interested, I think I'd like to just for a few minutes run down some of the things that the legislature did. The paper said we had the best session we've had. I'm going to tell you, it's interesting because they all tried to interpret why was this a good session and why weren't the others good. The others were just as good. They were just as good, except we didn't have any confrontation, we didn't fight, we didn't beat up on everyone. But when I got here, when I got in this office, the legislature in a way had become the legislature and the governor. They had decided that they were going to run everything, and I wanted to run everything. They didn't like that, so we had a hitting of heads for a while but we got things through, but it wasn't easy. It was with a lot of what the newspapers loved, because they loved all the fights, they could write things. But I guess the worst thing that happened to me recently was the gun. When I was trying to emphasize that a gun being pointed in the face of a person is serious. An assault pistol put in the face of a person looking down the barrel, and I just talked to a man who had told me he had a pistol in his face 12 times. The first 4 times he was very nervous, the 5th time not much, and the 6th and 7th and 10th time was routine. But when you look down the barrel of a machine pistol, you get nervous. So I used that, and the reporter, I think after a time, he thought, I shouldn't have made a fool out of the governor. The governor was trying to emphasize a point. Have you ever been held up? Ever walk the street and worry about whether somebody's going to hold you up? Ever been in a bank where they spray bullets around and people die? I haven't been there, but I've seen the results of it, and I worry about that. Well, in the legislature this time, we accomplished some things, and I'll get to why I think you're talking about foreign affairs is so important. First of all, we established a family court. It's important because as with society now moving, we now find that more and more kids are incorrigible. And I like to cite the case of Charles Rock Dutton. Charles Rock Dutton was a Baltimore boy who hated authority and hated everyone and was an incorrigible in his own statement. If you don't know who Rock is the television star on Sunday night at about 8:30, and it's a great show. Charles Dutton was put in the reform school at age 12. He was let out and put back in at 13. He was let out on 14. By 15, he was fist fighting everybody. And by 16 or 17, he got in a fight and killed somebody. And he went to jail. And he stayed in jail about 14 years. And all of a sudden, Rock suddenly decides, this isn't for me. This is not for me. And he thought, I have to do something with my life. I've really got to do something with my life. So he decided he would get out of there. And you know one interesting thing he said? I took all the curtains down in my prison room. I took all the amenities out that we had over a period of time, and I had a stark cell. Now think about that. That was not his home, and he was not going to make it his home. What he was going to make it, what it was a prison cell. And he decided that by looking at a book, he had some acting ability, and eventually he went to Towson State, went to Hagerstown. He graduated from Yale on a scholarship and on his way, and now he, in addition to being a great star, he spends much of his time talking to young people in the state of Maryland, or wherever he's called, and he did that out at one of our high schools the other day, and with 90 young people that were fascinated by this man called Rock. And family court is something that we need to help people. Child support, they owe us $65 million. We've been having trouble with the legislature. And the legislature telling us that maybe you're a little too tough, and so we got that through. Clean air we got through, emissions. We got through a carjacking bill that was resulted with a Sioux case. That was a terrible, terrible crime. We got the empower the federal and local officers to work together. And I know you won't believe me, but there was jurisdictional disputes so that one group of officers would not go into another jurisdiction. They didn't work together. They didn't exchange information. They didn't do any of this stuff until we called them all together and said, we've got to get together. And they found out that by all working together, the information they got on carjacking helped everyone up. And we did that. We got a bill through on the gun shows. The thing that we did lose was slot machine regulation on the Eastern Shore. One of the big things that went through is the health insurance, and I think it was Kaz Taylor, Delegate Kaz Taylor, and O'Reilly, Senator O'Reilly, and our people, Nelson Sabatini, all working together that got this bill through. And I'm glad we did, because I think the states are going to be the ones who are going to have the health bills rather than the federal government. I think the federal government's going to get into a big battle on region, and it may be some time, so we've got to move forward as far as health insurance. Sort of a bill that nobody really paid much attention to. It got passed so fast. A unified building code for our state. A unified building code. Jacqueline Rogers, a genius. She's one of the smartest women I've ever known. She decided she was going to put that through, and she did it. And then for the city of Baltimore, it started off at less than ground zero and worked up to where it was passed almost with 123 votes to 23 against it, the convention center. Everyone said when we started, it never happened, can't be done, you can't give Baltimore all that money, and then we were able to sell it, and you were able to sell it, and everyone here, Mark Wasserman and the Sun Paper and the business community and everyone, that wasn't for the city of Baltimore, that was for the state of Maryland, the economy of the state of Maryland. We were able to do that. And then Mark Wasserman, who is doing just a super job as head of DEED, Department of Economic Development, he put in some measures on manufacturing, and they were passed, and I'm so pleased with that. Well, let me talk to you just very briefly, and I won't take much of your time, a few minutes to talk to you about international trade and why I think it's so important, international relations, why I think it's so important, international foreign affairs, why I think it's so important. First of all, our own people in the state, in the Eastern Shore, Western Maryland, Southern Maryland, right here in Baltimore, they do not understand the importance of foreign trade, foreign culture, all the things that are necessary, because some of them still think that America is totally self-sufficient and it's not necessary to worry about anything because we can do it all ourselves. I think that's a hard lesson that we're beginning to understand, that is not true. Got to understand that the world has a very important impact on our state. Now you might say, does Maryland have an international policy? Do we have an international strategy? And yes, the policy is to understand other countries and to understand that for the United States, for them to understand us. Now that is part of the strategy of Mr. Wasserman. Mine is a little different. His is trade, his is economic development, his is jobs. Mine is a little different. It's the same agenda, but it's a little different. I'm interested in people to people, looking a person right in the eye and saying, I like you. I became a close friend of the mayor of Kawasaki. We couldn't even speak in the same language, but I looked at him and he looked at me, and there was a bond of friendship. And the relationship between Kawasaki and Baltimore as a result of our meeting and just knowing each other helped our international relations with the city of Kawasaki and the city of Baltimore. He was my age. He was in the Japanese army. He was a mayor. He was interested in people. Everything that he wanted to do, I wanted to do. Everything I wanted to do, he wanted to do. But that relationship, that person to person was so important, and I pushed hard on that in culture, education, and so forth. Part of the strategy increasing the contact between Maryland and other countries. One, we're interested in trade and economic development. That's Mark. And two, a greater understanding of the world and the problems of the world. Until you go to another country, until you walk in the ghetto in Poland, the realities of the difficulty is not there. The progress that the Japanese make and have made, and to go to Hong Kong and Singapore and Egypt and all the other places and see what they're doing and see the importance to us as something we've got to understand. As a state, we've done a number of things. First of all, we've reached out to Canada. That's one of our great trading partners. We take Canada for granted. There's no armed guards between there, no shooting over the border. Just great people up there that are like us, and we like them, and they're the only country that stood by us one time when we were in some difficulty. Now, we send trade missions to there from agriculture. We've had exchanges in festivals. We met the mayor of Montreal, learned how to do snow removal from him, and we learned a lot of things from Canada. And also Eastern Europe. We went to Eastern Europe. We worked with emerging democracies so that they would understand about American business. When the emerging democracies come over here, the Estonians and the people from that area, they came over here, they had no more idea how to run a business or run a government than flying to the moon. Very interesting, all young, bright young people. And we sent a lady by the name of Marianne Sarr to Estonia, and she became the ambassador of the United States, but mostly Maryland, to the Estonian people, and renewed that relationship between some of her relatives that she hadn't seen in a long, long time. We went to Poland. We met now the president of Poland. I remember going up the steps and seeing him, and how the press was following him all around, and he was handing out pictures. It reminded me of Mayor McKellen. He was handing that out. So those of you who remember Mayor McKellen, he would go to a fire, and as the firemen would go up the ladders, he'd be handing them a picture. The Mayor McKellen and I we had trouble when I was in the city council, the mayor and I. When he got out of office, I appointed him as the member of the zoning board. And Mayor McKellen became the greatest spokesman for the mayor. And you know what, Mayor McKellen, on the zoning board, every Sunday he and his wife went to every place of zoning to see firsthand what was going on. I remember him so well. Japan, we went to Japan and improved our ties with the Kanagawa prefect, and Mark will tell me I'm saying it wrong, which is our sister state in Japan. And I'll tell you, the dynamic governor of that place is just great. And he was here and he invited us over there. And again, that people to people, that relationship of looking at him, he looking at us, him telling us some of the things that he was doing, built up a relationship. And as a result of this, Mark closed down the office in Japan for a while. Now he's opened it up in Yokohama, and we're moving forward. Mainland China, what a great opportunity there. We went to mainland China, and I quite honestly, when I went there, I never saw so many people in my life. I got off a train, and I was standing here, and these thousands of Chinese start walking towards us. This is it. It's all over. They're going to trample me to death. And these thousands of people went by, thousands. And then I was just amazed. Curious people. We were riding down a road in a van. A van stopped. There was a holdup. There was a blonde-haired lady with us, beautiful blonde-haired lady. And we were way in the interior of China. And the Chinese were in these trucks. They all jumped out. This lady looked out, and they converged on her. I thought, it's again. All done. Over. They're going to kill us. She had a Polaroid camera, taking Polaroid. And you talk about curiosity. But you know, they'll remember that. And the Chinese treated us real well, anywhere you wanted to go. A relationship between people to people, and that was important. A lot of potential for Maryland companies in Mexico and the Latin countries. I would like to see the trade between the countries, United States, Canada, Mexico, Central America. I think that's a natural axis for us, and I wish we could get that through. We haven't had all successes. We're not successful in Kuwait. After the war was over in Kuwait, we went over. We sent medical teams over, and we learned something else. We learned in many of those areas it isn't what you do, it's who you do it with. How do you work it? There was a good relationship between people, but we learned that you had to work through someone and some way, and I hope you'll follow what I'm saying on that. We haven't been only focusing on business. We've been concentrating on culture, because I think exchanges of culture between the various museums, between people, bringing artists over here, our artists going over there was important. We had an opportunity to set up education, agricultural, technological transfers. And I don't know if you know a man by the name of Kerwin. He is the head chancellor down at the University of Maryland. We took him to Saudi Arabia, and he sat way at the far end down there, and beside him was sitting someone else. I saw him talking and talking and talking and talking, and just at that lunch, that was an elaborate event, by the way, there was an exchange between the Saudi Arabia University and University of Maryland. He established that. And that was, again, what I talk about, that person to person, people to people. You know, we're very, very lucky because of Johns Hopkins and the university system. We have medical facilities. We went one place, and I remember in Japan, it was so interesting to say, I said, we're from Maryland. Maryland, United States. Johns Hopkins. Oh, aha, Johns Hopkins. Oh, that was different. So now we say Washington, Johns Hopkins, University of Maryland, and Maryland. We worked it that way so they know where Maryland is. We have a Maryland International Health Task Force. We have National Institute of Health right here. And I think we could do much better in bringing all those facilities, maybe not together because they like to do their own research, but by getting them to work together to bring into our area the bios, biotech, the things that are so necessary. Most recently, the business community collected supplies to help refugees caught in the fighting in former Yugoslavia. We went someplace called Slovenia. I never knew where Slovenia was, but we flew into this little country, untouched, absolutely untouched. No war, no nothing. But when we got there, the people were just as friendly and, again, very nice. But we established a relationship because they did not want to be overtaken and overcome by the Germans or the Russians or anyone else. They wanted to be free. And they wanted to talk with us about the things that we could do. And we were instrumental in helping. Mark was instrumental in helping Westinghouse get a contract as a result of our being over there. They did it themselves, but we certainly helped them getting the contract. And then I saw something over there that, again, this people relationship. In Slovenia, there were 60,000 refugees then from Yugoslavia that were coming in, all women and little children, all women, my age, a little bit younger, but they were just jammed into this country with nobody to help them. And we asked a medical team to come over, and again, by our relationship with them, we've exchanged meetings with them, we've exchanged, and actually have done business as a result of the things that the business community and we were able to do. All this has helped because this is a great location, and I just want to talk very briefly. Port of Baltimore. We've had a 3% increase in cargo this year. Now you say that doesn't sound like it's very much, but it is. 3% increase in our cargo, and we're up against some tough competition, but beginning to find out that because of good labor relationship, good working by Jim Lighthizer and others, that working relationship in that port has made those foreign shipping companies aware that there's labor peace. Because when we went there, many times they'd say to us, oh no, we're not coming there, you don't work in the rain. What do you mean you don't work in the rain? Well, if there's 2 raindrops, you stop working. We came back and got that changed. So that's the Port of Baltimore. BWI, good international tourism, increasing air cargo. One of the problems we got right now, we're debating, and I hope that debate will be over soon, on whether we should privatize the airport or whether we shouldn't privatize it. I'll tell you, there's no newspaper people here today, so I'll tell you, I am not for privatization. I really am not. I think we put so much money and so much effort into that great airport, and if we can get online and start moving in that airport, we'll bring in more cargo, more international cargo, and more international people as a result of it. And there is we're going to do something with that one pier down there. International banking and finance, our trade finance program is a national model. And I read in the paper today that Maryland's economy is good. We're the 5th best in the country. Even though we've lost a lot of jobs, we lost 21,000 jobs, they still say that our economy is good. And part of the economy goes to Louis Goldstein and Lucy Maurer, Board of Public Works, who were able, during this very difficult time, to retain that AAA bond rating. And that's very important because it's psychologically good and also saves an awful lot of money. And that helps us in finances. What does this mean in dollar value? Well, The dollar value on export rose 22% last year. In the past 5 years, export have nearly doubled, and from $2.5 billion to almost $5 billion. And foreign investment in Maryland is more than $5 billion. One other thing that people don't understand about international trade is how it affects them. How does it affect you? People want to know, what is this international trade? Why are you spending all this money going overseas? And if you don't come back with $16 billion worth of contracts, you know, it's a failure. They don't understand that you go over and you put the seeds out. You put the seeds out. And then you send somebody over again to follow it up. And all of a sudden, in comes the business. And what that means to us, that means one thing that Mark Wasserman talks about, and all of us talked about, jobs. It all equates to one thing. How many jobs are created as a result of our foreign trips? How much investment did we bring over here? How much expansion have we been able to do? I can tell you places, we've gone to Eastern Shore, Delsey Manufacturing. You know how they expanded in Maryland? You won't believe this, but this is true. We went over, and there were two states competing, New Jersey and us, two of us. I think they were leaning a little bit, possibly to New Jersey. The owner of Delsey, now I know you don't think this is true, but he was my age. And you say, well, what the heck difference does that make? He was talking to a guy his age, and I couldn't get up the step as fast as he could, but I almost got up the steps as fast as he could. He looked at us, and we told him how we really wanted that firm here, and we made a Delsey piece of equipment. He showed me how to do it. And he was so proud of taking these little pebbles, throwing them in a pot, and the next thing you know, the thing comes out, and there's a Delsey thing. And I said, this is the greatest thing in the world. I can't use it. Now, the reason I can't use it is too heavy. It weighs so much, I can't have it. But I put it on exhibit, and every time I go in the house, I look at it. I thought, gee, as a result of our efforts, Delsey came here again, an aggressive marketing by us, and it was tough. So the key word that we always use is job. We can't rely on domestic growth to provide all jobs. Right now, 65,000 Marylanders are directly affected by foreign trade, and we can increase this investment. When we increase the investment, we increase trade. All that investment also helps local government by providing revenue, and that's important. And again, Beretta was another one. We went over again, a trade mission to Italy, to Beretta. It resulted in Pocono City directly getting an expansion. The third reason for all of our efforts and so forth is in our future. More business opportunities are occurring internationally. And young people are the ones that we should be targeting. Tell them the opportunities that they have in international trade. New culture, new languages. Every kid over in a foreign country, school, learns a couple languages. You come here, you can't do that. Well, except in Montgomery County, where they have one high school with 12 different languages. But trying, as Bob Membry once said, teach a second language. And he was so right. And they can get jobs. For this reason, we want to think internationally. And every business, every country, every county, every person, and we want to start getting people involved in international trade. Business. Small business, in a way, is still fearful of international trade. They're worried about whether they can compete. They're worried about whether it's worth the effort, whether it's just as good should they stay in our own markets. They miss that opportunity on foreign trade. And Mark has set up an international trade center where he teaches people, young people, small business, in order to teach them how to work in international trade, and that's important, so that you'll be over that fear, looking at exporting services or product, sponsoring international programs and exchanges, making sure that we have top quality services and products. And what about government? What should we be doing? What should you do? What should you tell me that I should be doing? What should I tell the legislature about international trade? Every time I go and talk to them about international trade, they say to me, you know, that's ridiculous. Why don't you just spend your time here? And then we tell them about what we were able to bring, all the firms that we were able to bring, and we've got to convince our own people that international trade and international relations are important. The state government has a big role, but it's at all levels of government, every level of government. And other counties rely on their government. Let me tell you, We went over one of the countries. I've forgotten. Westinghouse was competing. France helps their industries straight ahead. One of our companies, Westinghouse, won a contract fair and square, absolutely fair and square, best of all. France filed an objection with the head of the government with that particular country. They had to reconsider the contract because of the pressure of the French government on the country. Americans won't do that. Our State Department won't do that. We won't actively help our companies. There's a couple reasons for it. I guess they're not supposed to be helping an individual company. I think that's stupid. I think our State Department should be aggressive in helping our companies when they compete in international trade. We want it. Now we want it. I happened to get a chance to talk to the president of the country, and this is again a true story. Talked to the president of the country, and I said, you know, our country won that fair and square, and there's objections. He didn't know what I was even talking about. It wasn't in his realm. But after I left, he went back and he looked and he found what I was saying was true. We won a square, and we got the contract. Or Westinghouse might have had some trouble. One of the things that I do find with the State Department, and I'm not as impressed with the State Department as I guess I should be. When we've come back, we've offered to help other countries, and we've met with discouragement, so much so that we don't bother with the State Department now. If we're going to do something in the way of medical, or if we're going to do something in education, whatever we're going to do, we try it on our own. And I think that's a sad commentary that we weren't on the good side of the State Department. They told us quite frankly, our business people couldn't believe it. Well, there's other things that we need to provide, and that's the infrastructure for education, transportation, and information. We've done a lot already in Maryland. We've got the international divisions, I said. We've got the World Trade Center Institute. We got investment in BWI, the Port of Baltimore, and highways. We're going to go on another trade mission. Mark is going to take us on another trade mission to the continent, in Germany and other places, to follow up. You know, it's important that you follow up. You just don't take advantage of somebody and get their business and then say, okay, we're not going to bother with you, come back again. So what we're going to do is going to go over and we're going to thank them. And maybe we'll get another contract, we don't know. And the financing, of course, is one of the most important things. There's only one thing that is missing, and I guess our people say it's a right attitude. The attitude of Americans towards foreign business, the attitude of young people towards foreign business, the importance of foreign business, but also the international effort needed for legislative support, the media, not to focus on helping us on our trade missions rather than saying, we want you to account for every dollar. We want you to tell us how you spent your money. That's important. But the more important thing is, what did you accomplish? Were you able to do anything? Were you able to bring something back? The business community has to be involved. It's important that people like you spread that message that foreign affairs and foreign business is important. That's my strategy, and that's our interests, and I want to thank you very much for letting me come and talk a few minutes about our foreign trade. I believe in it. I honestly believe in it. I know it's right. I knew it the first time that I went to Japan and messed up. I'll tell you how I messed up. Big shot, going over, walked in, threw the contract on the table, and said to him, sign. American way. Good contract. You got an advantage. Smart. You know, knew it all. And they bowed. And I bowed. And they bowed me out. And I said, what did I do wrong? I didn't understand them. I didn't understand in that country, they've got to trust you first. They've got to understand you first. They've got to look at you and see if you're going to be a good partner with them. And so that was the first hard lesson that I learned. And from there, we went on to every place we went. We tried to find out a little bit about the people, a little bit about how they do business, a little bit about the relationship. Mark does the business, and I talk about people. When I talk about people, the people over there sort of look at me, what is he talking about? Because, as I said, if you can look a person right in the eye, If you can let them think that you are sincere in wanting to have a good feeling towards them, it goes a long way. It worked. We've had cultural exchanges, we've had educational exchanges, we've had all sorts of things in addition to bringing jobs to the people of our state and our United States. Well, thank you for having me. I'm now finished, and if any questions that you have, Brad Jacobs, that great man from the Sun paper, will be glad to answer anything that you might have. Oh, no.
Mr. Governor, we thank you very, very much for your perspective and for an overview of Maryland's role in the international economy. The Governor has agreed to answer questions until 10 minutes after 7, and we'll promptly end the session at that time. We're going to have to ask you, Governor, to return to the podium if we may. Yes, sir, at the microphone.
Governor, you certainly should be congratulated for all the work you've done in attempting to bring foreign, or succeeding in bringing foreign businesses to Maryland and increasing foreign trade. But when we get those companies here, if they want to fly back home, today mostly they have to go over to Dulles to do it. Dulles, as I understand it, has somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 salespeople on the road, and BWI now has been cut down to 1 full-time person. Can't be for lack of money, because they've just created at least a dozen new jobs as greeters at BWI. So it has to be something else. But the results speak for themselves. Today we have no flights to the continent of Europe, and wouldn't it seem in line with your philosophy to increase our sales force for BWI?
Well, let me answer it, maybe not directly the way you asked the question, but our government, our state government, has not really funded BWI. We haven't, we always pull back on building the international runway. We don't have a good sales force, and I must be a little critical. We don't have the imagination. We just don't have an imagination in order to sell. The government, the federal government, pushes Dulles, pushes national, and tries to pull away from BWI. One of the things that we tried to do recently, Clay Mitchell really believes in privatization. He really honestly believes it. I believe the other way. I think we shouldn't privatize. He and I jointly appointed a committee to look at the future of BWI. And one of the things that I asked him, what is our role? What is our best opportunities? Is it freight? Is it international trade? What is our role in relation to national and Dulles? I don't know whether that's going to be answered. But within the next week or so, I think the report will come back, and I sincerely hope it was not privatization. I hope it's just the opposite. If it is for us to run it, we will be in there changing the image of BWI with major changes in the structure. We got authorization for the lengthening of the runway. We have not publicized it. We haven't done the marketing job. I think you're going to see some changes in stores down there. I think you're going to see a very aggressive sales campaign. You're absolutely right. But we've got to do it ourselves. Now, we've got the money to do this. We do. We can do it. But it's whether we can get going on it. And for my remaining months or year, whatever it is, in office, that's where we're going to go. You're right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Governor, there are many things that a state can do for itself, many of which you've already touched upon, to promote international trade and international business for the state, infrastructure, marketing, so forth. But one always has to look to the federal government as sort of the gatekeeper, in terms of import-export type business, international relations, and so on. Is your administration doing much in terms of communicating with Maryland's congressional delegation, particularly our two senators, in terms of promoting passage of the North American Free Trade Agreement, of speeding up some successful conclusion to the Uruguay GATT round, and about doing something about dampening down the flurry of alleged fair trade actions, dumping subsidies and so forth, which seems to generate equally hostile responses from other countries? I mean, one almost gets the feeling that the whole international trade system that's been built up so painstakingly since World War II seems to be in danger of unraveling at some time. Is the state administration involved in this?
Well, that's a number of questions. And let me answer the first one. Have we been in touch with the Congressional delegation? Yes. We were one of the first, I guess one of the first governors to openly campaign for the pact between Canada, United States, and Mexico. We've been after Barbara and Paul continually. Over in Congress, there's opposition. Yes, we do that. We are continually after them to do that. As far as business is concerned and aggressively going after business, we do that too. And I missed the last part of the question.
Well, just in general, what influence is the state's administration exercising on the congressional delegation, and for that matter on President Clinton, on moving all the various
I'm going to be
areas
honest
of
with you.
trade law forward?
I don't think the federal government's going to help us. That's my opinion. Now, Mark does not agree with me. He thinks that the federal government's going to. I'm going on the presumption we're going to do it ourselves.
Well, I guess what I mean,
Strong.
Governor, is that the Congress seems to respond most, and the administration, when they feel that there is active political interest at the state level, that the people in the states can express, favorable opinions towards these things that they feel is to their benefit. Otherwise, they tend to be swayed by the special interest lobbies, such as the labor unions or the environmentalists. Is Maryland making the point that it's in our state's interest as a player in international economy to have these trade laws passed or to have them progress?
Yes. I can't answer in other words other than yes, because we've talked about it when we go over to present our program for the year and tell them international trade is important. Exactly what you're talking about, we push hard. We really do. With Steny Hoyer, with everyone involved, yes, we do, and we'll continue to do that. But that's on the national level, and we can only push. And when I go to the governor's conference, I push again. Absolutely push as hard as we possibly can to talk about it. We've met with Mexican representatives. We've talked with the Canadian representatives. We've actually talked with people in Central America about they want to join the Mexican, United States, Canada axis, whatever the term might be. The answer is yes. We've aggressively done that. Now, whether the government's going to do it or not, I don't know. But I can't wait for them while they make up their mind. Mark has delayed us going to Mexico. I want to go to Mexico and see what the situation is in Mexico, and we'll do that. But the answer to your question, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At the same microphone, please.
Good evening, Governor Schaefer. My name is Stefan Moser. I immigrated to the United States about 3 years ago from Germany and have tried ever since to persuade the businesses, especially here in Maryland where I live, to get engaged more in export. Unfortunately, almost to no avail. Most of the problems that were brought up against me, or arguments, were that, first of all, it's a very risky business, they are unfamiliar with it, and that returns are not worth the effort. I have to admit, because of the fact that most of these companies were expecting to do a minimum investment and get immediate large returns within a very short period of time. And in my view, it seems like there is a need to educate the small businesses or the companies in Maryland, specifically where we are now, to get more adapted to the mentality of other countries or other cultures in order to be able to prosper. After this long preface, my question, does the government of Maryland or your government foresee any possibility of creating any kind of media or some vehicle to get the people, or to educate the people, more in a sense that they would get involved in international trade, because this state has more to offer than to import, quite frankly. That's my...
Let me answer that by saying, I'll answer it again, sort of in the back way. First of all, I can't get the legislature to give us enough money to even try to talk about tourism. I see the ads from Texas, I see the ads from Virginia, I don't see the ads for Maryland anyplace. So we have difficulty with the legislature, and not being critical, they just don't understand the absolute importance of advertising and the things that you're talking about. Also, they've taken a pretty good punch on taxes, and they're all a little gun-shy. What you've asked is, are we doing anything? And the answer to that is yes. We have the World Trade Center Institute, and I'm going to give Mark a chance to think while I'm going to have him come over and explain what he's doing with that, because we're doing exactly what you're asking, but we haven't done a good job on selling it, because if you don't know about it. Mark, why don't you come over and answer that question? He loves me to do this to him.
I think three quick vehicles come to mind that we're using at the moment to speak to the needs of small business. The first, very good, Governor, is the World Trade Center Institute, which I would encourage everyone to join and to patronize. On any given day and any given week, the World Trade Center Institute, which is based right here in the World Trade Center, is out all across the state providing education to small business people about how to do business abroad. Furthermore, they've had some very successful seminars right here in this room, how to do business with Germany. Recently they had one for the aerospace industry. It's a very important way for us to reach on kind of the wholesale level Maryland business. Two other devices that we're using, and I hope you'll become acquainted with the International Division, is our Trade Fair Assistance Program, where people who are a little reluctant to go abroad, we attempt to provide them with full service abroad at trade fairs, many of which are in Germany, Hanover, and CeBIT, and Medica, and so on, where our folks in Europe take them, we reserve space, we help them learn the ropes. And the final and most important one is we have a unique relationship with the Export-Import Bank that the governor referred to. We are the stars in their system. We do about 20% of the volume that they're doing in the relationship they have with cities and states all across this country. And there's a wonderful lady named Marie Torres who runs that program. And both with the Ex-Im Bank and OPIC, we're developing a very unique set of relationships. So we are learning, and this is important, and this will continue to evolve, and you don't want to hear me, so thank you. How do I do, Governor?
I always think you do good, son. You know, one of the most difficult things is to get out what we're doing. It isn't a jazzy story. He sets up a World Trade Center. He teaches small business how to operate. He shows them what to do. Actually, we have a man over in Europe named Harry Geschunt. He's a world traveler. He knows every country, and he is excellent when we have to go someplace, whether it's in Europe or whether it's in the Far East, and he knows what to do. And it just does. And so I guess our hardest message is to get over to people that we're doing this. We're actually trying to do this. And we have some great success stories. I won't go into detail. We've done things in housing, have just done marvelous things in lumber. They've been doing it themselves for a long period of time. So the answer is yes, we are doing it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Sherman?
Governor, thanks from all of us for the peoples of Maryland for all the good works that you and your staff, Mark Wasserman, have been doing for the people of Maryland. Governor, are there any incentives, tax incentives, other incentives that you could use to bring foreign plants, to bring manufacturing plants, industrial plants to Maryland that you have not been able to use, and that you've lost those sites to other states? And if so, what do you need? Thank you.
Tax incentives I do not favor, never did when I was mayor. So long as I'm here, I don't think we'll be doing that. But Mark has set up a number of things in training programs, location, housing, all the things that we can do with the employees, low-interest mortgages, all those things that we've done, and we're still doing those. They're working. But tax incentive, I'm not too happy about that, because if you're going to give a tax incentive to a new one, what about the old ones that have been working with you for a long period of time? So that's one I won't use. But Mark, I guess you know that Coca-Cola came. They were going to come here. There were two places they were going to go, either here or one other place. And Mark worked with them, and with Charlie Ecker out in Howard County. Mark was going to get credit, or the state was going to get credit. Everyone had one objective. We had to overcome some of our own people. We had legislation. One person held up on a technical point that made no difference at all. We were going to fly back a council person from over in England to get the necessary vote. So we go out of our way in order to try to do anything we can. As far as Irene Rearman up in Harford County, very pro-business, understands her business. So the answer is yes, we do everything that we possibly can. We try to just not give money. We try to give services, mortgages, housing, education, all those things.
Mr. Roper?
Governor, the people of the state of Maryland collectively held their breath the other day, and we're happy to see that you're here tonight, fully recovered. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you. I got 1 minute. I'm going to be out here at 10 hours. Let me tell you about. I am prevention conscious. I believe in it. I know it's right, and I have been trying to get our people for a long period of time to understand what I'm talking about. Prevention. Prevent cancer. Prevent teenage pregnancy. Prevent drugs. Prevent prostate cancer. Prevention. I am sold on it. And so 10 days ago, my head started to spin. And it really was going around. I wasn't that bad. I thought, I can fight this off. Won't make any difference. And so someone looked at me and said, you know, you really aren't very intelligent. Well, I knew that already. But they said, you're talking about prevention, and you don't do what you say. And I said, you know, you're right. So I went up, and I had adjusted my medicine the way I thought I ought to take it. And my potassium level was here. And all of a sudden, they decided, they gave me bananas, and they gave me potassium, they gave me pills that were that size, potassium. They jammed potassium down my gut until I could hardly stand. I had so many potassium belly. But I'm back on balance now. I don't know what the next thing will be, but who knows? That was what the problem was. I feel fine. You know, you feel fine when you have good things happening, and so there's so many good things that happen in our state, and it really is a great state. If you think about America in the miniature, I'm trying to get Paige, and she's going to do it for me. All the things that the federal government is talking about, we're doing. There's a health bill, we're doing it. Tourism, we're doing it. Trade, we're doing it. So in the state, and we're not the only one, but there are other states, but we're doing a lot of the things that are so necessary in order to continue the greatness of the state. Where I failed, I have not been able to bring the state together. Eastern Shore, Western Maryland, Southern Maryland, all five little states. If somebody can bring them all together and get over this parochial attitude that if it's good for Ocean City, it's good for Baltimore. If it's good for Baltimore, it's great for Ocean City. And if it's great for Baltimore and it helps Western Maryland, we all win. And that convention center was sold on one premise. And that premise was, it is not for Baltimore, it's for the state of Maryland, and we'll all do well. And it was a result was that Camden Yards down there that was just a magnificent place, absolutely great place, and the time's up.